Now, this will illustrate exactly what we're talking about. This is Steve Bannon speaking to a very sparsely and frankly sadly attended event in Staten Island. Let's take a look at Sloppy Steve.
So we get the first 5 o'clock on November 8th. 5 o'clock we get the official exit polls. We're tied in Iowa.
That's it. There's no real constituency for this stuff. I mean, this is a guy...
He lives on earned media.
Steve Bannon is an Elmore Leonard character who's funded by weird racist oligarchs who want to strip your money and resources away to enrich themselves and also structure the courts and the economy so that they and their heirs can have power into perpetuity. This is where Piketty's work on intergenerational wealth and the stage of capitalism where we're at. We will either break to a post-capitalist, highly democratized economy which harnesses technology to generate broad-based prosperity and human flourishing, or we're going into neo-feudalism. And make no mistake that the Koch brothers and the Mercers and all of these other people, that's exactly what they want. That's what Peter Thiel wants. It's feudal, it's fascistic, it's anti-democratic in favor of markets, and it's not even pro-market in any sense that people might use it in a vernacular in terms of competition. It is structural setting of monopolies that are insulated from any type of labor, legal, or policy challenge. That's it. And there's no doubt Steve Bannon does a good job at times with a fake populism. And how you respond to that is super simple, which is you disaggregate. You say, hey, I'm not an idiot. I know that the subtext of all this stuff is racial. And on the flip side, where you're right about elites and money concentration and condescension and arrogance and lack of opportunity for people, great. I agree with you, Sloppy Steve. So do you support mass reunionization of America? Are you rallying those 15 people in Staten Island to go protest the Supreme Court overturning collective bargaining rights? I thought not, as I actually think you're taking money from the most dangerous people on the planet who want nothing more than to concentrate wealth and power for themselves, and this is just a marketing exercise. And with a proper left democratic message on all issues, we can defeat that with confidence and clarity moving forward.
The market rhetoric is very interesting. Like, they like the market more and more, especially when their relative buying power becomes more and more greater relative to everybody else, right? Like, yeah, you'd really like markets too if you were a billionaire.
Yeah, exactly. Markets are great if everything's preset for you. And don't ever believe any nonsense about that they're gonna, they really believe in competition. Get the fuck out of here. Peter Thiel's whole book is on how to build yourself a monopoly in the Silicon Valley economy, at least in my reading.
Yeah, and the idea that any sort of generic libertarian economist who would, for instance, probably still be at George Mason University, that they would come to their ideas about economics, especially like inheritance and tax and that sort of thing, and that it wouldn't be any inflected by race at all. Like, it doesn't really matter, because the point is that, like, those policies are incredibly cruel, and in order to not be aware of that, you have to have some sort of dumb insulation from like your own racism, basically,
or just structural disregard. Yeah, like, well, James Buchanan, who Nancy McLean did really important work on in Democracy in Chains. Democracy in Chains is a fundamental, you got to read that book if you want to understand what's happening in the country today. And James Buchanan, not only did James Buchanan and people in Virginia perceive in the 1950s, they got it. They understood that even if they were less personally upset by Brown versus Board of Education, which a lot of them were because they were racists, but even ones that say Buchanan didn't have any sort of particularly personally effective attitudes about race, he understood that the principle that federal power in that instance could intervene to protect civil and individual and group and human rights. Well, guess what? That has major implications for labor power that has major implications for a feudalistic top-down apartheid economy. And it did, and of course, first and foremost, it was black people, but it also absolutely affected workers and poor people across the board, and they saw that. So see what they see. And then with regards to normal people, I think there's plenty of people that can be persuaded with a simple, non-jargony, relatable, justice-oriented and self-interested message, and then you see what works. And then yes, there is a chunk of voters that they're voting on identity issues, and it's fucking gross. And maybe some of them will change. I think that's where the civic space comes in. There was a great piece about that guy, I forget his name, Black was his last name, I think, but he was the son of that Stormfront guy, and he went to college in Florida at the New School, which is funny because it's a New School. Florida is a very hippie school, and they started inviting him to Seder dinners, and through this process, now he's, voted for Obama, and I think is doing some type of PhD in history, and totally left the movement, and it happened through dialogue and engagement in the civic space, and that's great. And at the same time, like when you read about this guy, I don't think necessarily all members of the of those movements are as intellectually curious or as ready as he was, but being that as it may.